Welcome to Litbit channel. Today we will see English language studies 4th unit, aspects of language. The aspects of language in English language studies can be categorized into structural, functional and applied aspects, each of which contributes to our understanding of how English operates. First, we will see phonetics and phonology. Phonetic means to study of speech sounds. Phonetic is the study of how speech sounds are pronounced, transmitted and received. There are three main branches. Articulatory phonetics. This means this focus on how speech sounds are physically produced by the vocal organs such as the tongue, lips and vocal cords. For example, the sound P is produced by blocking the air flows with both lips and then released it quickly. Then acoustic phonetics, that means this examines the physical properties of sounds waves such as frequency and amplitude. For instance, the sounds of a whisper has a lower amplitude than a shout. Next one, auditory phonetics. This means one looks at how the human ears perceives sound, their pitch, volume and duration. Next one is the phonetic symbols. That one, English has 44 phonemes which are the smallest unit of sounds that can change the meanings of words. This includes vowel sounds like example E as in seat and consonant sounds ish as in ship. Next one is phonology. It's a study of sound patterns. Phonology deals with the way sounds functions within a particular language. It focuses on patterns and how sounds interact to create meaning. Phoneme means the smallest unit of sounds that distinguish one word from another. For example, in the words bat and pat, the first sound p and b is different changes the meaning. Next one is allophones. These are variations of your phonemes that do not change the meanings of word. For example, butter, the t sound can be pronounced differently in American and British English, but it doesn't change the word's meaning. Stress and intonations. Stress refers to emphasis placed on certain syllables or words, while intonations refers to rise and fall of pitch in speech. For example, the word record is a noun when stressed on the first syllable, record, and the verb when stressed in the second syllables, record. Next one is morphology. It's a study of word formations. Morphology studies the structure of words and how they are formed from smaller units called morpheme. So morpheme means the smallest meaningful unit of language. So there are two types are there, free morpheme and bound morpheme. Free morpheme means it can stand alone as words. For example, book and run. But in bound morphemes cannot stand alone and must attach to the other morpheme. For example, ing in running and in unhappy. Next one is word formation process. First one is affixes, adding prefix or suffix to a root word. For example, redo or kindness. Next one is compounding. That one is joining two existing words together. For example, toothbrush. Next one is blending. That one is combining parts of two words. For example, brunch from breakfast and lunch. Next one is clipping. That one is shortening longer words. That means AD from advertisement. Next one is acronyms. That is forming words from initials. Example, NASA from National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Next one is syntax. That means study of sentence structure. Syntax is the study of how words combine to form phrase, clause and sentence. It focuses on the rules that govern sentence structure. First one is word order. English typically follows a subject, verb, object, SVO word order. For example, in the sentence, she is an apple. She is a subject, is in the verb and an apple is a object. Next one is phrase structure. This refers to the arrangement of words in a phrase such as noun phrase, the big dog, subject of the sentence. Next one is verb phrase is running. action in the sentence. Next one is prepositional phrase in the park. That one describes location. Next one is clause types. Independent clause can stand alone as a complete sentence. For example, she reads. Next one is a dependent clause, that is cannot stand alone and depend on an independent clause. For example, because she loves books. Next one is sentence type. First one is simple. It contains one independent clause. For example, I like tea. Next one is compound. That is contains two independent clause joined by a conjunction. For example, I like tea and he likes coffee. Next one is complex sentence. That is contain one independent clause and one or more dependent clause. For example, I like tea because it is refreshing. Next one is compound complex. It contains two independent clause and at least one dependent clause. For example, I like tea and he likes coffee because it is strong. Next one is semantic, that means study of meaning. Semantic is a concerned with how language convey meaning. It helps us understand the meanings of words, phrase and sentence. First one is lexical semantics. It deals with the meanings of individuals' words. For example, the word bank can refer to a financial institutions or the side of a river. Next one is sentential semantics. It focuses on how sentence structure influences meaning. For example, the cat chased the mouse versus the mouse chased the cat. The meaning changes based on the word order. Next one is semantic relationship. First one is synonyms. Words that have similar meanings. For example, happy and joyful. Next one is acronyms. Words that have opposite meaning. For example, hot and cold. Next one is homonyms. That means words that have the same spelling or pronunciation but different meanings. Bat as an animal versus bat as a sports. Next one is polysyny, a word with multiple meaning. For example, bright can means intellect or shine. Next one is pragmatic. It means study of language in context. Pragmatic examines how meaning is influenced by context. It including social factors and conversational norms. First one is speech acts. These are actions performed through language such as making requests, offering apologies or giving commands. Please pass the salt is a request. Next one, implicature. Sometimes meaning is not directly stated but implied. For example, if someone says, can you open the window? They are usually asking you to open it, not merely checking your ability. Next one is dixis. This dixis words that recovers contextual information to understand their meaning, such as here, now, or these are ways of using language to maintain social harmony, such as using indirect language. For example, would you mind instead of do you do this? Next one is discourses analysis. It's study of connected speech and text. Discourse analysis is the study of language beyond the sentence level, looking at how longer stretches of language functions. First one is cohesion. This is how sentence within a text or conversation are linked together using device like conjunction or pronoun. For example, John went to the store, he bought some apples. Next one is coherence. This refers to the logical flow of ideas in a text or conversation, a coherent text making sense of a whole. Next one is genre of discourse. Different types of discourse such as narrative, that is telling a story. Next one is arguments, that is presenting a case. Next one is conversation, that is informal. Next one is psycholinguistic, that is a study of language and the mind. Psycholinguistic studies how the brain processes language. Language acquisition. This explores how children naturally learn language, often without explicit teaching, picking up words and grammar rules as they interact with the world around them. Next one is a cognitive process. This one looks at how our brain process produce and understand language in real time. For example, how we understand spoken or written words instantly. Next one is speech disorder. Dyslexia, that means where there is a difficulty with reading, or aphasia means which involves difficulty in speaking or understanding language or studied in this field. Next one is historical linguistic. It means study of language change. Historical linguistic explores how language evolve over time. First one is sound change. It's over time the pronunciations of words can change. For example, the word night used to have a pronounced k sound, but now we have say night. Next one is lexical change. It means new words are constantly entering the language. For example, selfie, and old words may disappear or change meaning. Next one is grammatical change. That means sentence structure or grammatical rules may shift. For example, Old English conjugations that modern English. In conclusion part, each of these aspects, phonetics, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatic, discourse analysis, psycholinguistic, and historical linguist, offers a unique lens to understand how English functions as a system of communication. These fields work together to reveal how language works, evolves, and is used in real life situations. As we study language through these aspects, we become better equipped to understand its structure, use, and meanings in various. Let's we see the next concept is object language in English language studies. Let's we see what is object language. In linguistic, object language refers to the language that is being studied and analyzed. So, when we analyze English, English is an object language. This term comes into play especially when we are distinguish between the language being described, that means object language, and the language we use to describe it, meta language. For example, when we describe English grammar rules in English, English serves both as the object language, the language being studied. The meta language means the language we use to explain the rules. Now, let's look at how English as an object language is analyzed across different linguistic. Let's see phonetic and phonology. It's a sound system of English. Phonetic and phonology are concerned with how sounds are produced, transmitted, and preserved in English. Object language. First one is phonemes. In English, we have 44 phonemes, which are the distinct sounds that make up words. For instance, in the words pat and bat, p and ba are distinct sounds that change the word meaning. Next one is stress pattern. English words can have different stress pattern. For example, photograph is stressed on the first syllable, so photograph, while photographic is stressed on the third syllable, photographic. This change in stress can change the word's meaning or function. Next one is morphology, that means word structure in English. Morphology looks at how words are formed and how their structure change in English. Object language examples are, first one is morpheme, that is the word unhappiness consists of 3 morphemes. And prefix, happy root, ness is suffix. The tense formations in English, we add suffix to indicate tense. For examples, the verb walk changes to walked in the past tense by adding the suffix ed. Next one is syntax. In sentence structure in English, that is, syntax is the study of how words are arranged to form sentence that makes sense and follow grammatical rules. Object language examples of, first one is word order. That is, English typically follow the subject verb object SVO order. For instance, correct, she reads a book, but incorrect means reads she a book. This does not follow the correct sentence in English. Next one is passive voice. English allows for the constructions of passive sentence where the object of the action becomes the subject. For example, the teacher reads the book. In passive voice, the book was read by the teacher. Next one is semantic, it meaning in English. Semantic is about understanding how words, phrase and sentence creates meaning in English. Object language examples are homonyms. In English contains words that are spelled or pronounced the same but have different meaning. For example, bat can means a flying mammals or a piece of equipment used in sport. Next one is polysemy. Some words in English have multiple meanings depending on the context. For example, bright can means both intellect, she bright students and shining. The sun is bright. Next one is ambiguity. Some sentence in English can be interpreted in more than. For example, the chicken is ready to eat could means the chicken is prepared to be eaten or that the chicken itself is eaten. Next one is pragmatic. That means contextual meaning in English. Pragmatic looks at how context affects the meanings of a language, considering the social situations, the speaker intent and the listener's interpretation. Object language examples are literal versus pragmatic meaning. Can you open the window? It literally means this is asking about someone's ability to open the window. Next one is pragmatic meaning is in most case this is a polite way to request that the listener open the window. Next one is dixies. Some words is English depend on the context for their meaning. For example, in the sentence, I will meet you there tomorrow. The words there and tomorrow need context to be fully understood. Where is there? When is tomorrow? Next one is discourse analysis, that is text and conversation in English. Discourse analysis is about studying how long a piece of language, that is a text conversation, it works and how meanings is built beyond individual sentence. Object language examples are cohesion. In English, we link sentence and ideas using pronouns and conjunction. For example, John bought a new car. He loves it. That means the pronouns he and it link the sentence together. Then conversation structure. In English conversation, there are expected way to respond. For example, how are you? I'm fine, thanks. And you? This is a typical response structure in English. Next one is sociolinguist, that means English in society. Sociolinguists look at how language varies based on social factors like region, culture and social status. Object language examples are, first one is dialect. English varies across the region. For example, in British English, the word lift, lorry and holiday are used, while in American English, people say elevator, truck and vacation instant. Then code switching, or sometimes people switch between language in a single conversation, such as I will call you Manana, mixing English and Spanish using Manana for tomorrow. Next one is psycholinguist, that means English and the mind. Psycholinguists focus on how the human brain process, learn and use language. For example, first language acquisitions. When children learn English, they may make error like good instead of went, which is an over generations of the past tense rules. Next one is speech error. Sometimes we make mistakes when speaking. For example, cup of coffee instead of a cup of coffee is a common speech error in English. In conclusion part, in English language studies, English is the object language. Each aspect, phonetics, morphology, syntax, semantic, pragmatic, discourse analysis, social linguistic and psycholinguistic focus on different features of how language functions and dwells as a system of communication. By studying the object language, we can understand how language work on various levels from structure to context. Let's see the next concept, meta language. What is meta language? In language studies, meta language refers to the language we use to describes, analyze, or discuss another language. It includes the technical terms and rules used by linguists, teachers, researchers to explain the structure, meanings, and functions of language. It's essentially meta language is the language we use to talk about language. For example, when we describe past tense or subject verb agreement, we are using meta language to explain grammar rules. If you say the word run is a verb, the term verb is a piece of meta language. Let's we see how meta language applies to different aspects of language studies. First one is phonetics and phonology. Phonetics deals with the pronunciation, transmissions and perceptions of speech sounds, while phonology studies the patterns of those sounds in a language. Meta language examples are, first one is phonetics. In phonetics, we use terms like phoneme, articulation, voiced, unvoiced sounds, diphthong, and consonants. For example, the phoneme p is a voiceless bilabial plosive, which means it is a sound made by blocking air with both lips and releasing it suddenly. Next one is phonology. In phonology, we focus on patterns in sound. We talk about stress, intonations, and minimal pads. Words that differs by only one sound like pat and bat. For instance, the word contract is stressed differently depending on its part of speech. As a noun, contract, that means stress on the first syllable. Next one is as a verb, contract, that means stress on second syllable. Next one is morphology. It studies how words are formed and structured, analyze the components that make up a word. In meta language example, first one is morpheme, the smallest unit of meanings in a language. We use terms like root, prefix, suffix, and inflection. For instance, the word unhappiness consists of three morphemes: un prefix, happy root, and ness suffix. The process of forming new words by adding affixes, prefix, suffix, for examples, adding the suffix ness to happy forms happiness. Next one is syntax, is a study of a sentence structure and how words combines to form grammatically correct sentence. Meta language examples are subject, verb, object, and word order are key terms in syntax. For example, in the sentence, she writes a letter. She is a subject, writes is a verb, a letter is a object. Next one is active versus passive voice. We use meta language to explain the voice of a sentence. Active voice, she eats a apple. Passive voice, the apple is eaten by her. In English, typically follows the SV. Next one is semantics. Semantic is a study of meaning in language, focusing on how words, phrase, and sentence convey meaning. Meta language examples are synonyms, antonyms, polysemy, ambiguity, or terms used in semantics to discuss different aspects of meaning. For instance, the word bright can have two meanings. Polysemy, it can mean both intelligent and shining. Ambiguity, the sentence the bank is closed could refer to either a financial institutions or the sides of a river depending on context. Next one is pragmatic, is studies how context influence meanings in language and how speakers use language in social interaction. Meta language examples are Dixie's implicature, presuppositions, and speech acts or common terms. Pragmatic, for instance, this refers to words whose meanings depend on context, like there and tomorrow in the sentence. I will meet you there tomorrow depend on context for full understanding. So, speech act, when we say, can you pass the salt? We aren't literally asking if someone is able to pass the salt. We are making the request. This is an example of a speech act. One is discourse analysis, looks at how language extends beyond individual sentence and how ideas and sentences connect in longer conversations or text. Meta language examples are terms like cohesion, coherence, discourse maker, turn taking. Ellipsis helps us analyze the discourse. For instance, cohesion in the sentence John bought a car, he loves it. The word he and it creates cohesion by referring back to John and the car representatively. Then discourse markers are words like however, therefore, and but help to organize ideas. For example, however is a discourse marker, signals a contrast between ideas. Next question is sociolinguist. That means is the study of how language varies across different social groups, regions, and context. In metalanguage, examples are dialect, accent, register, and code switching are key terms in sociolinguist. For instance, code switching refers to alternating between language in a conversation, as in I will call you banana, mixing English and Spanish. So, dialect different regions may use different terms, like in British lift means elevator, while in American English we say elevator. Next one is psycholinguist. It examines how the brain processes and learns language. Meta-language examples are language acquisition, speech errors, and overgeneralizations are terms we use in psycholinguist. For instance, children often make mistakes like saying good instead of went due to overgenerations of language rules. Next one is speech error. Then sometimes people make error like saying a cup of coffee instead of a cup of coffee. Phonological process difficulties. Let's see the importance of meta language in English studies. Facilitates learning. That means meta language allows students to understand complex language structures systematically, breaking down how language works. Next one is enhanced communication. That means linguists and teachers use meta language to explain grammatical rules and language pattern in a clear and structured way. Next one, aids in language teaching. Teachers use meta language to describe the rules of grammar, pronunciations, and meanings, which make learning easier. Next one, support research. That one, linguists used meta language to analyze and compare language, documenting their findings in the constant manner. In conclusion part, meta language is an essential tool for discussing and analyzing the English language in various aspects. From phonetic to psycholinguist, it provides a clear vocabulary and framework that allows us to describe, understand, and analyze language in a systematic way, whether discussing sounds, word structure, sentence constructions, or meaning. Meta language helps make the complex system of language more accessible and easier to understand. Let's see the next concept, paradigmatic. A paradigmatic relations refers to the relation between linguistic unit like words, sounds, or phrase that can be substituted for each other in the same context. These units typically belongs to the same category and are interchangeable because they share meanings, grammatical functions, or phonetic properties. For example, paradigmatic relations in words. In sentence, she bought a car. In this case, the word car can be replaced by bike, truck, boat, etc. because all these words belongs to the semantic category of vehicles. Paradigmatic relationship between we can switch one vehicles for another, but the overall meaning remains similar. Now let's dwell into paradigmatic relations in different areas of language. Paradigmatic relations in phonetics and phonology. In phonetics and phonology, paradigmatic relations occurs when sounds can be substituted in similar environments, changing the meanings of your words. For example, phonemic substitutions, that means minimal pairs, words bit versus bat. Here, the sound of vowels in bit and a in bat can be substituted for each others, which change the meanings of the words. These sounds are paradigmatic relations because they belongs to the same category of vowels. For examples of paradigmatic relations in stress pattern: word preview, noun preview, stress on the first syllables. Next one, verb preview, that means stress on the second syllable. Both words have the same root but differ in stress pattern, and they forms a paradigmatic set because they represents different uses of the same base. Paradigmatic relations in morphology. In morphology, paradigmatic relations exist between morphemes, the smallest unit of meaning that can be substituted within word structure to create different form of words. For examples of inflectual morphology, words walks, walked, walking. All these words are different inflected forms of the verb walk, then representing different tense and aspects. These forms are in a paradigmatic relations because they belong to paradigm and shares a common root. For examples of derivations morphology, words happy, happiness, unhappy. Happy, happiness, and unhappy belong to the same words family, where happy is a root, happiness is derived through derivations, suffix ness, and unhappy is derived with a prefix an. These words forms a paradigmatic set in the dominant of emotion. Next one, paradigmatic relations in syntax. In syntax, paradigmatic relations occurs when words or phrase can be replaced by other words or phrase while maintaining grammatical correctness. For example of noun substitution, paradigmatic set of noun. Sentence: the dog is barking. In this sentence, a dog can be replaced with cat, bird, child, etc., because all of these are noun and fit the same grammatical role in the sentence. They forms a paradigmatic set of noun. For example of verb substitutions, paradigmatic set of verbs. Sentence: she wrote a letter. The verb wrote can be substituted with read, typed, printed, etc., as the verb are all in the paradigmatic of past tense action verb. Each verb changed the specific meanings of the sentence, but they follows the same syntactic structure. Next one, paradigmatic relations in semantic. In semantics, paradigmatic relations occurs between words that shares meanings or related in meanings. These words can be synonyms, acronyms, or words in a hierarchical relationship. First one is synonyms, words with similar meaning. Sentence: he is angry. This word angry can be replaced with ferocious, mad, annoyed, or irritated because these words belongs to the same semantic paradigms or expressing negative emotions or anger. Next one is acronyms, that means words with opposite meanings. In sentence, the water is hot. The word hot can be replaced with cold in the same sentence, as they are acronyms that form a paradigmatic relations within the set of temperature adjectives. Hyponymy, that means specific versus general terms. In sentence, she adopted a dog. Dog can be replaced with animals more general, poodle more specific. All these words form a paradigmatic set of terms related to animals or specific breed. Paradigmatic relations in pragmatic. In paradigmatic relations come into play when choosing words based on context, politeness, formality, and social appropriateness. For example, formal versus informal speech. Informal, can you help me? Then formal, would you assisting me? That means help me and assisting me are in a paradigmatic set but belong to different registers, informal and formal, depending on the social context. For example of speech acts, command, close the door, request, could you close the door? Both phrase or direct action intended to get someone to close the door. But one is more direct and another more polite, showing the paradigmatic. But one is more direct and the other more polite, showing the paradigmatic choice of speech act forms. Next one, paradigmatic relations in discourse analysis. In discourse analysis, paradigmatic relations play a role in ensuring coherence and smooth transitions in text and conversation. They allow for the substitutions of words or phrase without changing the overall meaning. For example, pronoun substitutions. In text, John is a teacher, he loves his job. The pronouns he replaces John, maintaining coherence between sentences. He is a part of paradigmatic set of pronouns which could also include she, they, or we depending on context. For examples of synonyms used in text. In text, the experience was a success. The study provided valuable insight. In experiment and study are near synonyms and can be substituted without changing the core meanings. These terms form a paradigmatic set within an academic context. Next one is paradigmatic relations in sociolinguistic. In sociolinguistic, paradigmatic relations reflect variation in language based on social group, region or registers. For example, dialectical variation, American English apartment, British English flat. Apartment and flat, paradigmatic variation for the same concept depending on dialect. For example, slang versus formal words. Slang chill, that is informal. Formal means relax. Chill and relax belongs to different paradigms of registers, which can beings more informal and the other more formal. In conclusion part, paradigmatic relations are essential to understand how language functions at various levels, from phonetics and morphology to semantics and sociolinguistics. They allow for the substitutions of units in sounds and words and phrase within a given context, helping shape meanings, maintaining coherence, and ensure communications is effective. Understanding this relationship enables us to grasp how meaning is conveyed and adjust depending on context, structure, and social dynamics. Let's see the next topic, syntagmatic relations, which are another fundamental concept in linguistics, particularly when it comes to understand how words and sounds work together to form coherent expressions. Just like with paradigmatic relations, syntagmatic relations help organize and structure language, but they focus more on word combinations and order in sentence rather than on substitutions. Let's see what is the syntagmatic relations. A syntagmatic relations refers to the linear relationship between linguistic units that appears together in a sequence or sentence. It focuses on how words, sounds or phrase are ordered and combined to form meaning, and is concerned with how these units follow each other in a fixed sequence. For example, sentence, she writes a letter. The word she plus writes plus a letter follows a fixed syntactic order in English: subject, verb, object structure. This sequence is important because the meaning relies on the words appearing in this exact order. If we change the order, the meaning can change or become unclear. Now, let's see how syntagmatic relations work in different aspects of language. First one, phonetics and phonology. In phonetics and phonology, syntagmatic relations are concerned with how sounds combine in a specific sequence to form syllables, words and phrases. These relations also highlight the natural pattern of sounds combinations in a given language. For example, phonetic constraints, sound sequence in English, valid sequence, str in street, invalid sequence srt. It is not a valid sequence in English. The sequence of sounds in street follows the rules of English phonotactics which govern the allowed combinations of sounds in the language. In this case, str can occur together but srt cannot. Example of a stress pattern: import, noun import versus import verb import. The stress pattern of these words change depending on whether they are used as a noun or verb. The placement of stress follows syntagmatic rules, meaning that the stress shift depending on the syntactic rules of the word in the sentence. In morphology, syntagmatic relations involves the way morphemes, the smallest unit of meaning, combines to form words. The sequence of morphemes must follow a specific order to produce grammatically correct words. For examples of affixes, disbelievement, dis prefix plus believe root, ment is a suffix. The morphemes disbelieve and ment must occur in this specific order to form the word disbelievement. If you change the order, such as meant believe this, it becomes incorrect because morphemes must combine. Next one is example of compound words: blackboard, black plus board. Blackboard is a compound word where the morphemes black and board are combined in this fixed syntagmatic order to form the meanings of a writing surface. Reversing the order like board black result in a meaningless word. In syntax, syntagmatic relations govern the word's order in sentence and determines how words are arranged to form grammatical and meaningful structure. For examples of word order, SVO structure in English: the boy kicked the ball. This follows the typical SVO subject verb object order in English. If you change the order like the ball kicked the boy, the meaning changes and it becomes grammatically incorrect because the subject and the object roles are reversed. Next one, examples of adjective placement in English. Correct order is a beautiful red dress. The adjective order in English typically follows the pattern opinion, color, noun. Reversing the adjective would lead to an ungrammatical structure: a rare beautiful dress. This is an incorrect example of a syntactic dependency. I am going to the store. The preposition to must be followed by a noun phrase like the store to form a valid sentence. This shows how certain words rely on a fixed syntagmatic order to make sense. In semantic, syntagmatic relations governs how words combine to form meaningful expression. The relations between words in a sentence can change the meaning depending on how they are sequenced. For example of collocations, words that naturally occur together. Correct collocation: make a decision. Make a decision is a correct collocation because these words naturally combine in English. Saying do a decisions would be incorrect because do and decisions don't typically combine in this way. Next one is examples of selectional restrictions. Correct sentence is she drank water. The verb drink requires a liquid as its object, so water fits perfectly. However, she drank a chair is semantically incorrect because drink doesn't select an object like chair. Next one is example of idiomatic expressions. Kick the bucket, meaning to die. Idiomatic expressions like kick the bucket are examples of syntagmatic relations. The meaning comes not from the individual words but from that specific combination in the idioms. In pragmatic, syntagmatic relations affects the meanings of sentence based on context and politeness. The way words and phrase are sequenced influence how they are interpreted in social situation. Example of politeness strategies: polite request is could you please close the window. This is a polite request because of the way the word or order. The phrase could you please make it more polite compared to a direct order like close windows, which sounds rude in most contexts. Next one, example of contextual meaning in sentences. I will meet you at the bank. The word bank has a different meaning depending on the syntagmatic context. Bank of the river refers to the side of a river. Bank near my house refers to a financial institutions. The meanings of bank change based on the other words that are syntactically combined with it. In discourse analysis, syntagmatic relations ensures that ideas flows logically and meaningfully across sentence or largely stretches of text. For example, of cohesion with pronoun, text is John bought a car, he loves it. He refers back to John and it refers to car. This maintains coherence in discourse and shows how syntagmatic relations help link ideas across sentences. Next one, examples of discourse markers, that is connecting ideas. In this one, first I woke up, then I had breakfast, finally I left for work. The word first, then, and finally create a sequential flow in the discourse. They serve to organize the narrative and show the order in which events occurred. Social linguist syntagmatic relations are influenced by the social context and can reflect register variation and code switching. For example, of register variations, formal versus informal speech. Formal means I regret to inform you that the meeting is postponed. Informal, sorry, the meeting off. The syntagmatic choice here differ depending on the level of formality. The formal version uses more complex and polite phrasing, while the informal one is shorter and more casual. Next one is example of code switching, that is mixing language in conversation. I am going to La China to buy some food. Here La China is a Spanish for the store and instead into an English sentence. The syntagmatic structure follows both English and Spanish rules. Context of code switching. Next one is the difference between paradigmatic and syntactic relations. Paradigmatic relations involves substitutions. You chose one element from a set to replace another. Dog can be replaced by cat. But in syntagmatic relations, it involves combinations and ordering of elements. It deals with how words or sounds combined in a specific order to form a coherent structure. For example, the dog run fast follows a set syntagmatic order. Syntagmatic relations are essential for understanding how language is structured at every level, from sound patterns and word formation to sentence structure and social context. They focus on how words are ordered and combined in a meaningful sequence, making sure that grammar or flows of ideas work together to convey coherent meaning. While paradigmatic relations help us choose between alternative, syntagmatic relations help us to organize those alternatives into a logical, meaningful structure. Let's see the next concept, metaphor and metonymy. Metaphor and metonymy are two critical linguistic devices that helps to convey meaning in a nuanced, indirect and creative way. Both plays a significant role in semantic, pragmatic discourse analysis, social linguistic and creative linguistic. Let's break down each aspects in detail so you can understand how they function in language. Let's see the metaphor in language. Definition of metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that implies a comparison between two different things by stating that one thing is another. Based on a perceived similarity, this comparisons helps to enrich the meanings by linking abstract concept to more tangible experience. For example, time is money. Here, time is conceptualized as valuable just like money. Then types of metaphor. Next one is types of metaphor, a conceptual metaphor. This types of metaphor involves a mapping an abstract concept onto a more concrete experience. Example, life is a journey. Life is conceptualized in terms of travel. Next one, my argument. Arguments are framed as wars. Structural metaphor. A structural metaphor uses a more detailed comparisons where a whole system or concept is metaphorically structured by another. Example, she is in the driver's seat of the project. The project is structured like a car journey. We are at a crossroad in our relationship. Relationships are structured as a road. Next one is orientational metaphor. This metaphor related to spatial orientations, example up, down, in, out, etc., and often reflects physical experience or common human perceptions. For example, he is feeling down today. Sadness is metaphorically linked to the direction down. Rise or raising. The increase is conceptualized as upward movement. Ontological metaphor. Ontological metaphor treat abstract concept as though they are physical objects or substances. For example, my mind is full of ideas. Ideas are treated as an object occupying space. Next one is she has a mountain of work to do. That means work is compared to a physical object or quantity. Next one is role of metaphor in different aspects of language. Phonetic and phonology. In phonetic, metaphor is used to describe sound qualities, soft consonants versus hard consonants. Next one is morphology. That one is word formation sometimes involves metaphor. Foot of the mountains, using the body part, metaphors in geography. Next one is syntax. Metaphor influence the syntactic structures used to express abstract ideas. He constructed a strong arguments. Here an argument is metaphorically compared to a building. Next one is semantic. Metaphors expand and enrich word meaning. For example, bright idea. Here intelligence is compared to light. Next one is pragmatic. A metaphor help convey indirect meanings, often for politeness or nuisance. She has a warm personality. Warmth is metaphorically associated with friendliness. Next one is discourse analysis. Metaphor help create vivid imagery in storytelling. Persuasive speech. The economy is a sinking ship. The economic crisis is compared to a shipwreck. Next one is social linguist. It means different cultures may use distinct metaphor. The heart is the seat of emotion. Common in West culture, while the liver is the seat of emotions, may be found in some Asian culture. Metonymy in language. Definitions of metonymy. Metonymy is another figure of speech in which one word or phrase is substituted for another with which it has a close associations or relationship. Unlike metaphors, metonymy relies on contiguity, that things are close together in space, time, or concept rather than similarity. For example, the White House issued a statement. This means the White House represents the USA government or president. Types of metonymy. First one is part whole metonymy, that is synecdoche. This involves using a part of something to represent the whole or vice versa. For example, all hands on deck. It means hands represents people who can help. Producer product metonymy. In this case, the producer, that means maker, is used to refer to the product they produce. For example, he bought a Tesla. Tesla represents the car produced by the company. Next one, place institutions metonymy. A place can be used to represent the institution associated with it. For example, Washington is discussing new policy. Washington here refers to the USA government, not the city itself. Next one, Cause and effect metonymy. In this form, the cause is used to stand for the effect or vice versa. For example, she had a good read. Read refers to the book that was read. Role of metonymy in different aspects of language. In phonetic and phonology, sometimes sound or styles of speech are described metonymically. For example, say he speaks in Shakespearean tone. That tone here represents style or manner of speaking. Next one is morphology. Then word formation can also involve metonymy. For example, Google it. Here, Google stands for the act of searching on the internet. Next one is syntax. Some structures in language rely on metonymy for their meaning. For example, the restaurant served excellent food. That means restaurants here metonymically represent the chef or staff who prepared the food. Next one is semantic. That one is metonymy shift the meanings of words often in creative or indirect way. For example, Hollywood refers to the film industry, not the city itself. Pragmatic metonymy is often used in indirect speech, making communication more concise. For example, she married money. Here, money stands for the wealthy person. Next one, discourse analysis. In media and news, metonymy is used to condense ideas or events. For example, the crown will make an announcement. This means the crown refers to the monarchy. Next one is social linguist. Different cultures have different uses of metonymies. Example, Big Ben refers to both the bell and the clock tower in London. In conclusion part, both metaphor and metonymy play essential roles in language, enriching how we express complex ideas, making connections, and convey deeper meaning. Metaphor relies on comparisons through similarity. Both metonymy use associations and relations. Both figures of speech help us express thoughts and emotions in a nuanced, indirect manner, shaping communication in power way. Let's see the next concept, literary device. The literary device and projections in a language, explaining each concept with the example. First one is phonetic and phonological device. These devices focus on the sound pattern in language and how these sounds impact rhythm, mood, and meaning. First one is alteration. Definition: the repetitions of consonant sounds at the beginning of the words. For example, Peter Piper picked a peacock. Pickled Piper. It functions. This device creates rhythms and musically in speech and writing. It is commonly used in poetry to create a pleasing sound and make phrase more. Next one is assonance. It means repetition of vowel sounds within words. For example, the rain in Spain stay mainly in the plain. It functions is assonance to the musically of a piece, enhancing the mood or emotional tone. Consonance, that means repetitions of consonant sounds typically at the end of the vowel. For example, the lumpy, bumpy road. Consonants add flaws and rhythms, improving the readability of sentence or verse. Next one, onomatopoeia. It means words that imitate natural sounds. For example, the bees buzzed around the flowers. It means onomatopoeia helps create a sensory experience for the reader, making the descriptions more valid and real. Next one is metaphorical and lexical device. This device deals with words formation, choice, and meanings. Metaphor meanings, a figure of speech that compares two unrelated things based on similarity. For example, time is a thief. It functions a metaphor allows the writer to convey complex or abstract ideas in a more vivid or accessible ways. Next one is simile. That means a direct comparison using like or as. For example, her smile was as bright as the sun. It means similes enhance imagery and make descriptions more detailed and easier to visualize. Next one is personifications. That means giving human qualities to non-human object or abstract concept. For example, the wind whispered through the trees. Its functions make non-living things seems more relatable or live, deepening the emotional. Next one is hyperbole. It defines extreme exaggerations for effect. For example, I have told you a million times. It functions. Hyperbole is often used to create humor or emphasize an ideas. Next one is oxymoron. It defines a combination of contradictory terms. For example, deafening a silence. It functions. This device creates a paradox, promoting the readers to think. Device create a paradox, promoting the readers to think more deeply about the contradictions and its possible meaning. Next one is paradox. It defines a statement that seems self-contradictory but reveals a deeper truth. For example, less is more. It functions a paradox, challenge conventional thinking, and invites the readers to reconsider what they know about a concept. Syntactic device. These devices concern sentence structure and how sentences are put together grammatically. Parallelism. It defines using similar grammatical structure in a sentence or across sentence. For example, like father like son. It functions parallelisms, creates balance, making sentence easier to follow and adding emphasis to the comparison. Next one is anaphora. It defines repetitions of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or sentence. For example, I have a dream that one day, I have a dream that every valley. It functions. This device strengthens the emotional impact of a statement and make it more rhythmic and memorable. Next one is epistrophe. It defines repetitions of a word or phrase at the end of successive clauses. For example, government of a people, by the people, for the people. Epistrophe emphasizes the idea present and reinforces it through repetition at the end. Chiasmus. It defines a reversal of word order in parallel structure. For example, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It functions. This creates a striking contrast and makes the statement more memorable. Semantic and meaning-based device. These devices focus on word meaning, association, and interpretation. First one is metonymy. It defines replacing one term with another that is closely related or associated. Defining replacing one term with another that is closely related or associated. For example, the White House issued a statement. It means the White House is a US government. It functions, makes language more conscious and symbolic. Synecdoche defines a part of something represents the whole or the whole represents a part. For example, all hands on deck. Hands means a soldier. It functions. Synecdoche allows for more economical and symbolic expression. Next one is irony. It defines a contrast between expectations and reality. For example, a fire station burned down. It functions. Irony highlights contradictions and often creates humor or reflections on absurdity. Euphemism defines a mild or indirect expressions used to replace something harsh. For example, he passed away instead of he dead. It functions. Euphemism soften the impact of harsh truth, making language more polite. Next one is pragmatic and discourse device. This device shapes spoken and written discourse affecting communications. First one is a rhetorical question. It defines a question asked for effects with no expectation of an answer. For example, who doesn't love a good story? That means it functions, it engages the audience and provoke thoughts. Next one is antithesis. It defines placing contrasting ideas side by side. For example, it was the best of time, it was the worst of time. Antithesis highlights the difference between ideas, strengthening the meanings. Next one is symbolism. In symbolism, defines using object or concept to represent abstract idea. For example, a dove symbolizes symbolisms gives deeper meaning to the text, often representing complex ideas or emotion. Next one is allegory. It defines a narrative with a hidden meanings, often moral or political. Example, George Orwell, Animal Farm is an allegory for the Russian Revolution. So, allegories conveys complex ideas, thoughts, and storytelling. Next one is socio-linguistic and cultural device. These devices influence how language reflects culture and society. First one is idioms. It defines a phrase whose meaning isn't literal. For example, break a leg. It means good luck. It functions, idioms enrich language, cultural depth and figurative meaning. Next one is a proverb. It's a traditional saying that expresses a stitch in time saves nine. It functions, proverb conveys moral lessons concisely and memorably. Next one is code switching. That means switching between language in a conversation. For example, I am going to Ladina to buy a grocery. I'm going to do Ladinda to buy grocery. It functions, it reflects bilingualisms and cultural identity. In conclusion part, literary device enhance sounds, meaning, structure and communication in language. They serve various functions from improving rhythms and imagery to expressing cultural values and emotions. Let's we see the next concept, projection in aspect of language. In linguistic, projection refers to the way smaller linguistic elements, it means like words or phrase, extend into larger structure in a hierarchical manner. This concept is widely studied in syntax, semantic, phonology, pragmatic, and cognitive linguistics. Projection help us understand how words and phrases contribute to sentence structure, meaning, and communication. Let's go step by step through each type of projections, explaining with the example. First one is syntactic projection, that means structural projection. Syntactic projections refers to how words and phrases expand into larger structure in a sentence. This is a fundamental in generative grammar, especially expert theory, which describes how phrases are built. Let's we see the types of syntactic projection. First one is a lexical projection. So it's a head projection. Every word belongs to a specific category. It means a noun, verb, adjective, etc. Each word or head determines the structure of the phrase. The phrase is named after the head. A noun phrase is named after the noun. For example, the verb eat projects a verb phrase, eat an apple. The noun book projects a noun phrase. It means the book on the table. Next one is expert theory projection. Expert theory proposed by Noam Chomsky explains how words expand into phrase in a predictable way. First one is structure. Head is a X, the main word, for example, noun and verb. Intermediate projections, X is add modifier or complements. Maximal projection, that means XP, is a full phrase. For example, sentence, the big dog chased the cat. Noun phrase, the big dog. Head, dog. Intermediate projections, big dog. Maximal projection, the big dog. Verb phrase is chased the cat. Head is chased. Intermediate projection, chased the. Maximal projection, chased the cat. Next one is functional projections. In adding that lexical projections, that is noun, verb, adjective, some elements like tense, determiners and complementizer also project their own phrase. For example, the boy has eaten the cake. Noun phrase, the boy. Tense phrase, has eaten. Verb phrase, eaten the cake. Next one is complement projection. The complementizer phrase introduces a subordinate clause in complex sentence. For example, she knows that he is coming. That is a complementizer introducing the clause he is coming. The phrase that he is coming is a complementizer phrase projected from that. Next one is semantic projections, it meaning projection. Semantic projection refers to how words extend their meaning based on context, presuppositions, and reference in a sentence. Presupposition projections. A presupposition is an implicate assumption that remains true even when the sentence is negated. For example, John stopped smoking. Presupposition is John used to smoke. Even if neglected, John did not stop smoking. That assumption that he used to smoke still holds. One is a reference projection. A noun phrase can refer to different object depending on the discourse context. For example, she loves the book. The book can refer to a specific book or a book recently mentioned in conversation. Next one is scope projection. Scope projections affects qualifiers, negations, and models by changing the interpretations of the sentence. For example, everyone didn't pass the test. First one, no one passed. Second one, not everyone passed. The meaning depends on how the negations didn't interact with everyone. One is phonological projection, that means sound projection. Phonological projections refers to how sounds extend across symbols. Phonological projection, that means sound projection. Phonological projections refers to how sounds extend across syllables, words, and stress pattern in spoken language. For example, stress projection. In English, stress placement changes meaning. Record is I bought a new record. In next one, verb basic, I need to record this song. Pragmatic projection, that is contextual extension. Pragmatic projection is how meaning is extended based on context, conversation, and interaction. First one is speech act projections. Words can different things depending on how they are used in conversation. For example, can you open the window? Literally meaning, are you physically able to open the window? Projected meaning, a polite request to open the window. Dixie's projections, Dixietic words like here, there, now, then change meaning depending on the speaker context. For example, I will meet you there. There could means a cafe, a school, or any place based on the conversation context. Next one is cognitive and conceptual projections. A conceptual projection involves a mapping mental models onto language, shaping how we understand abstract concept. First one is metaphorical projections. It based on conceptual metaphor theory. We use metaphor to understand complex idea. For example, time is money. We talk about time as if it is a valuable currency. It means saving time, wasting time. Next one is a frame projection. It means a certain words trigger an entire mental frame or scenario. For example, she started cooking. The word cooking activates a mental frame involving a kitchen, food, utensils, and recipes. In conclusion part, projections in language plays a vital role in how we form sentence, drive meanings, interpret sounds, and communicate effectively. Syntactic projections builds sentence structure. Semantic projections expands meaning. Phonological projections affects pronunciations and stress. Pragmatic projection extends meaning based on context. Cognitive projections links language to thoughts. By understanding these projections, we gain a deeper insight into how language works across different levels of structure and meaning. Thank you viewers. Thanks for watching this video.